There's a particular kind of silence that falls in a ballroom when a fairy tale breaks. It's not a loud, crashing sound. It's the quiet shatter of 500 people realizing the gracious matriarch they came to honor is being publicly, politely, put out to pasture by her own daughter. And the worst part? She was handing me the shovel and calling it a golden watch. The Valdez Foundation Gala was supposed to be a celebration of my husband's memory. Instead, my daughter used her toast to announce my well-deserved retirement, presenting it as a gift. The ballroom of the St. Regis was a sea of black tie and glittering jewels, a testament to the world Carlos and I had built. For 30 years, the gala had been the heart of our social calendar, a night where we celebrated the real heroes, the teachers in underfunded schools, the volunteers in community kitchens, the kids from the barrio who, with a little help, became doctors and engineers. Our foundation wasn't about flashy, distant causes. It was about home. It was Carlos's legacy, and for the 10 years since his passing, it had been my entire life. Sophia, my daughter, looked radiant. At 35, she was the picture of modern elegance, a world away from the little girl who had handed out lemonade at our first fundraiser. She took the podium to a warm round of applause. "Thank you all for being here to honor my father," she began, her voice smooth and confident. She spoke of his vision, his compassion. And then she paused, her eyes finding mine in the crowd, glittering with what I mistook for love. "But a legacy cannot live in the past," she continued. "It must evolve. For too long, my mother, Isabella, has shouldered the entire weight of this foundation. She has been its heart and soul." She smiled at me, a tight, practiced curve of her lips. "And so, tonight, the board and I want to gift her with the one thing she's never had, time." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I leaned into my table's microphone, my social smile firmly in place. "Time for what, darling?" I asked, my voice light, a gentle prod to what I hoped was a joke in poor taste. She didn't miss a beat. "Time to rest, Mama. To travel. To finally be free of the endless meetings and budgets." She gestured to her husband, Mark, who stood near the stage, looking polished and smug in a tailored tuxedo. "The foundation is in capable hands now. It's time for a new chapter. A bolder chapter." The giant screens behind her flickered to life. Gone was the familiar, modest logo of the Valdez Foundation. In its place was a slick, minimalist design, the Vanguard Horizon Fund. A dramatic video began to play, showcasing starving children in a dusty, unnamed country, followed by a celebrity ambassador I recognized from a superhero movie. The voiceover spoke of global impact and scalable solutions. It was a massacre disguised as a transition. My life's work, the embodiment of Carlos's love for his community, was being erased in front of 500 people. They were turning his name into a brand for celebrity vanity projects. The applause was hesitant at first, then grew, fueled by confusion and a desire to be seen supporting the new. I was a guest of honor being escorted to the gallows, and everyone was clapping for the executioner. The days that followed were a blur of quiet humiliation. My office at the foundation, a warm, cluttered space filled with photos and thank you letters from decades of work, was cleared out by the time I arrived the next Monday. A bright, young assistant I didn't know politely informed me that my key card had been deactivated for security reasons. Sophia and Mark were always in meetings when I called. The message was clear: I was a relic. A sentimental obstacle to their sleek, soulless future. I retreated to my apartment, the silence echoing with the ghost of Carlos's laughter. The purpose that had sustained me through my grief was gone, stolen by my own child. I felt unmoored, a ship cut loose from its anchor. A week into my exile, the intercom buzzed. I wasn't expecting anyone. A voice, sharp and clear, came through the speaker. "Senora Valdez? My name is Gabriela Reyes. I'm a journalist. We need to talk about the foundation." Curiosity, a feeling I hadn't felt in days, stirred. I let her up. Gabby Reyes was a woman in her late 30s, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing and a no-nonsense posture. She carried a worn leather satchel and an energy that crackled in my quiet living room. I apologize for the intrusion, she said, sitting opposite me without waiting for an invitation. But there's no time for pleasantries. The Valdez Foundation saved my life. It paid for my college when I had nothing. I will not stand by and watch it be looted. Looted? The word was a shock. What are you talking about? It's a rebranding. A misguided one, but… It's a smokescreen, Gabby interrupted, pulling a tablet from her bag. I've been digging into the Foundation's new strategic partners. This Vanguard Horizon Fund. It's a shell. The money isn't going to feed children in Africa. It's going here. She turned the tablet toward me. It showed an aerial photo of a half-built, luxury resort on a tropical island, surrounded by crystal-clear water. The construction had clearly stalled. The Azure Cove Resort in the Bahamas. It's been bankrupt for 18 months. Until last month, when a newly formed LLC called Vanguard Horizon bought the debt for pennies on the dollar and started funneling cash into it. I stared at the image, my blood running cold. That's not possible. The board approved the new mission. They saw the financials. The financials were forged, Gabby said flatly. Mark has a friend from his investment banking days who created beautiful, completely fictitious projections for returns on these international initiatives. The board voted based on a lie. It's fraud. Massive breach of fiduciary duty. Your daughter and her husband are using your husband's charity as their personal piggy bank to bail out a failed business venture. The betrayal deepened from emotional to criminal. It wasn't just that Sophia found me embarrassing, she was a thief. She was stealing from the very people Carlos had dedicated his life to helping. We have to go to the police, I said, my voice trembling with a new cold rage. Not yet, Gabby countered, her journalist's mind already several steps ahead. They'll lawyer up, hide the paper trail. We need to force their hand. You're a founding member of the board. You still have the power to call for a full, independent forensic audit. You need to invoke that right. Today. And so, the counterattack began. I was no longer Isabella the grieving widow, but Isabella the plaintiff. With Gabby as my guide, I drafted a formal letter to the Foundation's board, citing grave concerns over financial irregularities and invoking my charter right to a third-party audit. The response from Sophia was a torrent of angry phone calls, accusing me of being paranoid, of trying to cling to power. Simultaneously, Gabby worked her contacts. Quiet, concerned articles began to appear in the business sections of newspapers and on philanthropic blogs. Questions swirl around Valdez Foundation's new direction, read one headline. Major donors express concern over Vanguard Fund, read another. The whispers grew into a roar. One by one, the Foundation's oldest and most loyal donors, people who had loved Carlos, began suspending their contributions. The financial pressure mounted, squeezing Sophia and Mark's scheme from the outside. The audit was like a spotlight on a nest of cockroaches. The shell companies, the forged documents, the transfers to the Bahamas, it was all there, laid bare by impartial accountants. Sophia and Mark were cornered. Cornered animals are dangerous. They fought back not with lawyers, but with a knife aimed at the heart of everything I held dear. They requested a meeting, just the three of us, at my apartment. Sophia looked haggard, her polished veneer cracked. Mark's smugness had been replaced by a desperate fury. Call off the audit, Mother, Sophia said, her voice brittle. Drop this. Now. Or what, Sophia? I asked, my voice calm. You'll have me removed from a board I'm no longer on? You've already taken everything else. Not everything, Mark sneered. He slid a manila envelope across the coffee table. We took a trip to your home country. Did some digging into the family history. The saintly Carlos Valdez. His story isn't quite what you've been selling all these years, is it? I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were copies of old land deeds and business registries. They showed that Carlos's father, my father-in-law, had not been a simple farmer displaced by the old regime, as we had always said. He had been a mid-level functionary, a collaborator who had grown wealthy by acquiring properties seized from political dissidents. The documents suggested the family's initial fortune was built on blood and betrayal. He was a profiteer, Mark said, his voice dripping with venom. A parasite. The whole self-made man who never forgot his roots story is a lie. You call off the audit, you sign over your remaining voting rights to us, and this stays buried. You fight us, and we leak it. We'll see how long the Valdez Foundation lasts when everyone knows its name is built on stolen land and dirty money. I felt the world tilt. Carlos's goodness, his integrity, was the bedrock of my life, of the foundation. If this was true, everything was a lie. I must have looked shattered because Sophia's expression softened for a fraction of a second. It's for the best, Mama. Let us fix this. Protect Papa's name. I told them I needed time to think. The moment they left, I called Gabby. I was crying broken. Is it true? I asked her, my voice a whisper. I don't know, Gabby said, her tone grim. But if it is, we'll face it. Give me 24 hours. Those were the longest hours of my life. But Gabby Reyes was a force of nature. She didn't just look at the documents Sophia had, she went deeper, to archives and exile networks I didn't know existed. She returned the next evening, her face etched with fatigue, but her eyes blazing with triumph. It's a lie, she said, holding up a thick file. But the truth is more incredible than you can imagine. The documents were real, she explained. Carlos's father had indeed been a functionary, but he was also a secret member of the resistance. He used his position to funnel information and money. The properties he acquired were held in trust, used to hide dissidents and their families. When the regime fell, he was mistakenly branded a collaborator by the new government. He fled with his family, including a young Carlos, in disgrace, never revealing the truth to protect the network he had left behind. Carlos knew, Gabby said softly, showing me letters he had written to an exile group, letters I had never seen. He knew his father was a hero. The foundation, it wasn't just charity, ISA. It was a continuation of his father's work. Helping exiles, supporting the displaced. He was finishing the mission. The relief was a tidal wave, washing away the poison of Sophia's threat. My Carlos was not just a good man, he was the son of a great one. Their attempt to blackmail me with his past was not just a betrayal of me, it was a desecration of his father's sacrifice. Sophia and Mark had called a press conference for the next day, intending to preempt the audit's findings by painting me as vindictive and the foundation as corrupt from its inception. We decided to let them have their stage. The room was packed with reporters. Sophia and Mark stood at the podium, looking somber. They began their rehearsed performance, talking about painful family divisions and unfounded allegations. Then, Gabby and I walked in. The cameras swung toward us. A gasp went through the room. We walked to the front, and without asking, I took the podium from my stunned daughter. My daughter intended to share a story with you today, I began, my voice clear and strong, carrying a lifetime of authority. A story about my late husband, Carlos. She believes it is a story of shame. She is wrong. It is a story of profound, secret courage. I told them everything. Not the sanitized version, but the true story. The father who was a spy. The son who dedicated his life to redeeming a name that needed no redemption. I held up the documents Gabby had found, the letters Carlos had written. I didn't hide from the past, I illuminated it. Sophia and Mark discovered a fragment of this truth, I said, turning to look at them, their faces pale with horror. And they tried to use it as a weapon. They tried to blackmail me into silence, while they systematically looted the foundation that was built on this legacy of courage. Their betrayal is not just of me, but of every person this foundation has ever helped. The room erupted. The story was no longer about financial fraud, it was a Shakespearean drama of good and evil. Sophia and Mark were escorted from the building by security as reporters shouted questions. The aftermath was swift and absolute. The audit's full report was released, leading to criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement against Sophia and Mark. They were removed from the foundation in disgrace. I returned to the Valdez Foundation not as a figurehead, but as its CEO. My first act was to restore its original mission and its original name. My second was to appoint Gabriela Reyes to the board of directors. We installed the most stringent financial controls imaginable. The foundation's work returned to its roots, but with a new, powerful dimension, we now actively supported the families of political exiles and dissidents around the world, finally fulfilling the full, hidden scope of Carlos's father's dream. They tried to bury my past to secure their future, but they dug too shallow. What they found wasn't a skeleton, it was a foundation of stone. Sophia thought my love for Carlos was a vulnerability she could exploit. She was wrong. It was the source of my strength. To anyone who thinks your history is a weakness, remember, the truth is the deepest ground there is. Stand on it.